All right, we're doing a roster review today. It's going to be for DinoConV. He needs some help with TW and Grand Arena, and we're going to go through all the factions and see what we can do to point him in the right direction. Dinocon is only a 1.7 mil GP player, which is awesome. I mean, dude, you're doing spectacular considering the roster you have. You've got both top metas with the Jedi Revan and Darth Revan. You've got Malik. You are doing very good. And the fact that you've unlocked and started working on Treya is another plus. So, scrolling through your roster here, I just sorted it by speed. But we're going to go ahead and go faction by faction anyway, even on the ones that aren't developed. And I can kind of, give you some advice on which characters you might want to work on to beef up a team that you would make from that faction and which faction you can skip over, especially at your level now. The fact that you've started off right and you're staying lean. Some of these characters that you haven't worked on that I see here, you can honestly leave them at level 1, gear 1 until you're ready to put some work into them. It doesn't do any good to leave them sitting at, level 73, gear 5 or whatever. It's just a little bit of fluff, but every bit of fluff you can keep out of your GP at this stage is going to be much better for you, because once it's on there, there's no way to take it off. So if you can start lean and stay lean, you're going to be doing much better when it comes to Grand Arena matches and helping your guild out in TW, since you'll have a PvP focused roster. So let's start off. First faction is your bounty hunters. You've already got a gear 12 Bosk, and he's got the Zeta on there. So that's a great way to start off. I see that you've picked out your squad for this faction. You've got 5 bounty hunters that you're working on, and that's fine. You'll work on the others eventually at some point, but you don't need to. You can make 2 full bounty hunter teams, but that's if you have all 10. And right now, the ones you're working on are going to give you the most versatility. Definitely you want Bosk with his lead eventually. You'll want to put the unique Zeta on there, just because that's going to make it a much more difficult team to take down when you can get him fast enough to get his taunt off in a hurry. The fact that you're working on Django as one of yours is a big plus, because you'll be able to swap him out as lead when you need it for an offense team or to get the starting defense boost. Whenever you put your team on defense and you want to make your opponent use a CLS or something else to be able to outspeed you. So that's great that you're working on him. Boba's a great one to have, complements the team really well. I personally like Cad Bane because of the stuns that he offers. And then Aura Singh does make a nice solid 5th for the team, because you've already got some work into her, and she is tankier than than your IG or your Greedo or your Zam would be. So the fact that you're working on those, you're doing good there. I would say put a few more gear levels in. Think of gear 8 and under. I mean, at your level 8 is functional, but just as a rule of thumb, 8 and under is trash, because everyone stops at 8, because that's generally where the hardest gear blocks start to form with stun guns and everything else that's required, and it keeps your character at gear 8 and you need 1 or 2 pieces to get to the next level. Focus on getting them up to 9 or 10 so they'd be a nice mid-level useful team. They're going to be much harder to take down, and then eventually you do want to put them all at 11 or 12 when the gear permits. But think of a stopping point for your level to be a minimum gear 9, and then you'll be able to use them in combat and not feel bad that you're leaving a weak link that your opponent can take advantage of. So consider putting some more gear on those that you're already working on, and worry about working on the others that are level 1 gear 1 at some other point in the future. Once you get the ones you're working on to a decent level, 9, 10, you'll be sitting good as far as being able to have a good Grand Arena squad that might be able to get you some defensive holds and be a lot more reliable. As far as Zetas go, I know I mentioned eventually you'll want Bosk Unique, and then the only other one you really need would be Django Unique, and that's, again, this is down the line, just something to put on your to-do list for whenever, because Django Unique, when you have that, he'll be a great killer against Night Sisters, which is always a pain team to take out, but with him and Boba leveled up, they'll be able to put in work and be an effective counter to that team. So consider those just in the back of your mind. Put them on your to-do list. But don't worry about putting a Zeta on like Django's lead or any of the other bounty hunters' lead, because you'll only use them in rare circumstances. So the cost for the Zeta isn't really going to help you, especially at your level. Clones, you're fine to skip these for now. Eventually, you will want to get Rex, and right now they're working on Galactic Republic, so we don't know if they're going to add in new clones or new characters. That doesn't really matter too much. Rex is the only clone that you're going to use 90% of the time. He's going to, you're going to want him at gear 12 because he is so squishy, even at gear 11. But there are better teams you can work on for the moment. Just work on starring him up as you can, and then once you do get him closer to 7 stars, then start thinking about gearing him up, because you won't need to invest a Zeta or anything, but you will get some good dividends from that work when you have Wampa or you put Nest underneath him or some others, and we can work on those team compositions once the time comes. You still have a while to go yet. Okay, we'll skip over your droids for now because those will be covered in other factions. Taking a look at your Empire, the droid in here you'll want to put some work into gear-wise would be your IPD. Again, at your level, if you can get him up to just gear 9, even at low stars, he's going to do a lot for you. The fact that he can blow up characters and take out even 1 or 2, multiple characters, depending on his collateral damage, is going to help you out in PvP scenarios. You'll have a nice cleanup that you can use if you have to get rid of something like a Lone Nest or a Wampa, or just, a standalone character that you need to take out. IPD is going to be a good asset to have. So the fact that you've unlocked that is good. You just need to put a little bit of gear, and there's no hard rule as far as that goes. You just want it to last long enough that you'll be able to detonate it, whether you're using EP lead to do his cackle to prime it and then detonate it, or whether you want it to last long enough in a battle, with a full Empire team and then detonate it as you're able. That's up to you. But the more gear you can put on, the better the survivability, so the more time you'll have to work with it. But if you can get it up to gear 8, gear 9, that's probably the one character I would say that can be useful at gear 8, as long as you can blow it up in time. That's its main goal for you, and it's going to be, like I said, a good asset to PvP in your Grand Arena when you can go in and soften up a team and take out a strong character in one go. Another character I see you're working on, and sorted by speed, he's right where he should be, the fastest, is Thrawn. Again, gear 8 and lower is not too good. You'll want to get him up maybe to gear 11 if you have to stop there before you can gold him, but eventually gear 12, yeah. And you do want him nice and fast. That fracture is going to be a lifesaver, and the fact that he can swap turn meter and top up protection is going to help you. You'll use him a lot in your PvP combat. You'll use him in some of your arena teams. You'll also use him in the Sith raid. So he's got a lot of uses. Well worth gearing up and taking to max level. You definitely want to put some work in him for your Empire. The other ones I see you're working on, EP and Vader, you will want the Zeta for the EP lead. That right there will allow you to run a debuff heavy team, whether it's mostly Sith or mostly Empire. You'll be able to get a lot of functionality out of his leadership. You don't need to put a Zeta on his unique at this point. You also don't need Zetas on Vader lead or Vader unique. But a Zeta on Emperor Palpatine's lead will take your team a long way. You want to gear up Emperor Palpatine the rest of the way, gear up your Vader the rest of the way, and you have that with those 3 Empire and IPD, and you could throw a Sith in there if you have a spare one. That makes a good team right there. As long as you can get the debuff train going, you're going to be able to rip through most other teams out there. Definitely going to do you a lot of favors in Grand Arena and Territory Wars. So that's what I would say work on for now for Empire. Eventually, you will want to work on your Shore Trooper. I know he's a pain to farm, and he'll take a while to gear up, but he's one of the best tanks in the game. The fact that he's a pre-taunt and the fact that he's not only a tank, but he's a healer is a huge plus. You can run him in your Imperial Troopers when you get that far to take out a Mother Talzin team where you'll need the healing. But he also makes a great tank for the Emperor Palpatine team. Having that tank there with the pre-taunt and that extra healing is just invaluable. If you ever run short of ideas on things to gear up, tanks are going to be your go-to not faction, but class that you want to work on, because you always could use a good tank. You don't need to work on, RG at this point. There's no reason to work on Magma Trooper or your other troopers at the moment, because you don't even have Veers or Stark or range. So no reason to work on them. Concentrate on your EP team out of Empire. That's all you need to get from here to make Empire useful. Just taking a quick look at your Ewoks. You have a long way to go on Ewoks, so not really much to say there. It's going to be a while before you unlock C-3PO, but don't put in work on your Teebo or Scout, because you end up not using them in the late game stages, so they just sit there. Like, I have a Scout that I think is, gear 11 and a Teebo that's gear 9 that just sits there. And Teebo does take a lot of useful gear, cuffs and stun guns and stuff like that to get to gear 9. So don't invest in them at all if you don't have to. You'll eventually use all the other Ewoks except for Scout and Teebo on unlocking your C-3PO and in your Grand Arena and Territory Wars teams. So don't put any work into those guys. Eventually, when you have spare gear and whatnot, you will give some to Elder, and you can even throw him in other teams for the time being, just because he's a healer and it'll help to cleanse debuffs. That makes him pretty valuable. He can work with other teams, but it's not a necessity at this point. Just wanted to check in, see where you were at with those, and we'll move on to the next faction. Alright, taking a look at your First Order now. They're not in too bad a shape. For your GP, they're actually in really good shape. I would say put a little bit more gear into this faction. Again, if you can get them up to gear 9, gear 10, and you want to slap the Zeta onto crew lead, as long as you have that one Zeta, you're going to have a pretty effective squad for your Grand Arena at your level. Again, you want them all sitting at 9 or 10 or higher. But once you get them that, and you get that Zeta on the lead for sure, Like I said, it's going to be a good squad that you can put on defense. They also do have some offensive uses once you get, later in the game. You'll want to add more Zetas eventually, like to First Order Stormtrooper and to the old Kylo. But at the moment, it's not a necessity. Just if you want to make this squad useful for just a defense squad that you can throw down, or, try to use it on offense at your level, it's going to do a lot better with that Zeta on crew lead. You need that to have them with the healing. Gives them a lot more survivability. So focus on that. Couple more gear levels, and that squad will be where it needs to be. Doing pretty good here. Okay, next up is your Galactic Republic. You're actually doing pretty good here. You've got, Yoda geared up. You've got your General Kenobi. Anakin's getting there. You need to put a little more work into your Ahsoka and some more stars and gear into your Barriss. And she does need the Zeta to be effective. Like, she has to have it. Putting a Zeta on Anakin or Ahsoka is going to be a luxury Zeta, but Barriss really has to have that Zeta to be any kind of useful. And the fact that once she has it, she's going to provide a lot more healing and survivability to the team. And you will want her on a Padme team for that extra healing, especially when you go against teams like the Night Sisters, which right now that's what a Padme team is great for. The fact that she can take out Night Sisters and you don't have to waste a Traya and Darth Nihilus team, you're definitely going to want that functionality. And Padme does have the ability to even take out Darth Revan teams. So since you're collecting the meta teams and trying to keep up there, which is a great strategy, you're going to want the supporting cast. Now, this doesn't take into account what's around the corner. If we might get some new Galactic Republic character that will fit great in that squad, great. But you'll use a Zeta Barriss in a lot of other squads. Some people put her with a First Order squad to throw off cheap counters like Imperial Troopers. Or you might run her under a Bastilla squad to provide some extra healing if needed. Or throw her under a GK lead and she can call the dog piles with her healing ability. There's just a lot of functionality there. But without that Zeta, she's largely useless. So keep that in mind as you continue to work on your Galactic Republic. I know once you do unlock Padme, you're going to want to gear her up as fast as possible, preferably all the way straight to gear 11, so that she'll be as stout as she can be until you are able to get her and unlock the 7 stars where you can put your gear 12 on her. Then that would be great. But until then, gear 11 for her should be fine, as long as everyone else on the team is geared up enough. They should be able to help her with her survivability. And putting the Zeta on Padme leadership is number one. That's key. And then if you can, add her unique just to get that much more survivability to increase the amount of the protection up to 40% and make it non-dispellable. That's going to be huge for your team's survivability, especially if you just manage to unlock her at 5 stars. But that may be a ways off. I know you're chasing the metas and you're doing pretty good now. It's going to be up to you when she comes back around if you're indeed ready to unlock her, and you'll probably end up having to put some money towards doing that, because gearing her up and gearing up them separatists isn't a picnic. But, we'll work on that when the time comes and she comes back around and see what we can do to get you prepared. Genosians, these guys you can skip unless you're planning on using them as your separatist team to unlock Padme. That's all they're good for. I mean, their ships are okay, but right now we're in a rebel meta with the Millennium Falcon, which you already have. So you have no need for a B fleet. You'd have to gear all those Genosians up, and they suck at ground combat outside of the funny bonuses they give us for territory wars. They're just not very good. You can find a use for them if you already have them geared up, but since you don't fluff up your GP with them, unless you plan on using them for the event to unlock Padme. But I'm sure that we'll have better choices to use, like the newly reworked Count Dooku or Nute Gunray even. You got a ways to go, but that's something we'll work on. You don't want to waste needless gear if you don't have to, since you're not going to be using their ships anyway. Okay, now we're taking a look at your Imperial troopers. I already mentioned my thoughts on Stormtrooper as far as being a tank for your Empire EP team. For the rest of the troopers, you don't even have the important ones unlocked yet. You'll need Veers, and he has to have the Zeta, and then you have to have Stark and Range to really get some functionality out of your troopers. And since you don't even have them unlocked, I wouldn't even worry about the others at this point. They'll just be a drain on your gear. When you're ready and you have your Veers and Stark and Range start up and unlocked, and you start working on those, that's when you put resources into the rest of the team and work on, Snow Trooper and Death Trooper and whatnot. Alright, so you can skip over these guys for now. In Jawas, there's nothing for you to do here. Don't waste any credits or gear into leveling up any of your Jawas. You can star them up as you get stars from bronze packs or, whatever, but don't worry about anything to do with them. Right now, they're pretty much useless. Okay, taking a look at your Jedi. You're doing good there. The fact that you've got your Jedi Knight Revan unlocked and already geared up and ready, and you've got Grandmaster Yoda and Hermit Yoda and Ezra. I mean, you're doing really good for that team. As far as Jedi go, you're going to need to work on some more Jedi if you want to have a functional Jedi Revan squad, a Bastilla squad, and then a Galactic Republic team. But if you're only going to worry about two, which would be, looks like a Jedi Revan squad with Bastilla in it, and then a Galactic Republic team under, say, Padme, using your General Kenobi and your Anakin and your Ahsoka and Zeris, then that's fine. Just work on those, and you don't need to work on the lesser characters like Plo Koon. He's got a good ship, but that's about it. You're not going to use him for ground combat, in any top squad. You only do that if you have him up already like I do. He's not going to be your ideal choice at the moment. The next faction we're going to look at is your Night Sisters. You've got a long way to go there, so don't worry about putting gear into any of those just yet, because you'll need either Mother Talzin or Asajj to lead them, and you've got a ways to go before that's even remotely viable. So just skip over them for now. Looking at your Old Republic, you're actually doing pretty good. A Zeta on Karth would be good just for his lead, so that you can run a Karth lead dot squad. The fact that you already have mission geared up and Juhani in them is a huge plus. You want to go ahead and put some gear into Zalbar, because the synergy between mission and Zalbar is very good, especially when you get down to like 3v3 Grand Arena, and we do a lot of those. You'll want mission and Zalbar together in a team, and you can run them with Kira, or you can run them with Karth. Since you already have your Karth geared up, he's just missing that Zeta, and then he'll be able to do an effective lead on a dot squad. I would consider that. Then you'll have another defensive squad that you can use for Grand Arena and Territory Wars. And then, as far as luxury Zetas, you want to see about giving one to Mission so that she gets all the assists. That's where the damage comes from in that squad. You don't necessarily need Zalbar's Zeta if you have Karth lead with his Zeta, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, if you had Zalbar's Zeta, that's a big plus. Karth, Mission, and Zalbar all Zetaed in a trio. That's a fantastic team, and it's going to be very difficult for anyone at your level to overcome. Let's take a look at your Phoenix squad now. Right now, they're in decent shape. That's as far as they ever need to be honest. Don't put more gear, and definitely don't put any Zetas into your Phoenix, because they really do take like 4 Zetas and max gear 12 on everybody to be an effective squad. And even then, they can still be beaten by a good Rex Nest or Rex Wampa team. So it's a lot of gear, and it's expensive gear and a heavy Zeta investment when there's better places that you can stick 4 Zetas that are going to do, a lot more for you. So your team is passable now, probably for TB. I wouldn't really waste any more resources on it unless you want to take Ezra up for a Bastilla team or Jedi Knight Revan team. You're going to use some of the Phoenix in other squads. Like Chopper, he makes a good all-around tank. He can go in with your JTR resistance team. He can fit under a Rex Wampa team. He's just good as a tank. But as far as Phoenix in general, don't waste your resources gearing them up any further than they already are. Taking a look now at your Rebels. It's kind of a catch-all filter. You got everybody here, CLS, Chewie, Han, and they fit in other factions. Those would be the ones that I would focus on, are the ones that have cross-faction bonuses, like how R2 is a rebel and a droid and resistance. You'd be able to fit him into more categories, have a wider range of teams that he can help out in. Your CLS is probably going to be your top rebel character. You definitely want to, when you start working on him, take him up to gear 11 maybe for the time being, but eventually take him to gear 12. You will want to put a Zeta. The first Zeta for him would be on It Binds All Things. That's the most important one, even before his lead Zeta. But eventually, if you're going to want to use him to do like a Jedi Rev encounter or a Darth Rev encounter, you're going to want the Zeta on his leadership. You won't need his other unique, it's not that important. It Binds All Things is the most important Zeta, and then later on, his lead, depending on the level of teams that you want to be able to counter with him. And then Chewie, you want the Loyal Friend Zeta. That's the most important one, but you're going to want the other one too if you want him to become like a viable Traya counter. You're gonna want to have that. So you will end up having a maxed Rebel squad at one point, because it does take a lot of Zetas and a lot of gear to get them into shape. But once they're in shape, they can take out a top tier team. So there's definitely no investment lost with them. Those are the ones you should really be working on. The ones you don't have geared up, like Rolo and Farm Boy Luke, Ahsoka Fulcrum, there's no real reason to work on those, and don't waste any resources. Just work on the main ones that are a top tier squad. You don't need... You could put some gear into Admiral Akbar for his ship. I know you were concerned about your fleet arena, and right now it's the Rebel meta with an AA ship. So you can put some gear into him so that you can use, 6 E mods if you take him to gear 12, and he'll have a bit more survivability in the ground game, because you do use him as a lead for lesser teams, like an AA lead with Wedge or Princess Leia and C-3PO, I mean, that is a thing, and he does get some use there. So keep him in mind only if you're concerned about fleet mainly, but he does have some ground use. Other than that, the top ones would be like I said, CLS, Han, Chewie, R2, eventually C-3PO. So we'll move on to your next section and keep on going. Okay, moving on to your Resistance faction. You're doing good here. I see you got the Zeta on BB-8 and you've got JTR lead. One of the other Zetas that's going to do you some real good for this team, for a lot of teams, will be R2 Zeta on Number Crunch. That way he can share his bonuses with the rest of the squad. So you'll want that just so you can get that extra boost no matter what team he's in. And you will use him in Resistance, but you'll use him a lot in your Rebels too. And so you want him to be able to share with the rest of the team and give out those bonuses. That's going to be Zeta that should be close to the top of your list. So keep that in mind. You're doing good there. You don't need the other Resistance characters like Pilot or Holdo or Rose. All those are going to be useless to you. Keep working on the ones that you're working on, because even without C-3PO and you're just using Stick Ray and then Finn as your damage characters, they should be able to carry you through for PvP, and then you can still use them in the heroic Sith raid. You won't get as much damage as with C-3PO, but you should still be able to do pretty well with your JTR team. Again, just remember what I said about taking them up to, gear 9, gear 10, even gear 11 if you have the gear for it, and eventually you'll want to take them all to 12. But at your level, don't stop until you hit 9 or above. Okay, we'll skip over Scoundrels because they're going to be redundant with your Smugglers that are yet to come, and then Bounty Hunters, which we've already gone over. Let's take a look at your Separatists here, only because you've expressed interest in Padme. Padme is going to be more of an endgame character, but like I said, the fact that you've already got the previous metas with Darth Revan and Jedi Revan, I mean, if you can keep the pace and get Padme with a decent Galactic Republic squad, you'll be in really good shape. The fact that they've reworked Dooku is going to give you some options, so you don't necessarily have to have a 7-star Grievous. Separatists are going to be kind of a long-haul project. You may have to end up doing your Genosians, hopefully not. Keep working on the droids like Droidica and B1 as far as stars. I know they're going to be a mighty long farm, but once you get them, they're going to do a lot more for you than the Genosians ever will, especially if you get your General Grievous up, and run a full droid team. So Separatists are going to be something you'll be working on, but they're not going to be able to help you in the immediate future at all. So just keep working on starring them up, and then we'll gear them as appropriate, when the time comes back around. Hopefully that's something we'll be able to work on and see where you're at and what new ones have maybe entered the game that might be easier or more beneficial to you. Next up is your Sith squad. You're doing really well. The fact that you have your Sith Empire ready, and then the fact that you've also unlocked your Traya and already working on putting the Zetas on her and getting her started up, that's going to be a long process, but it's definitely going to help you because those are top squads at the moment. You've already got Scion where he needs to be. Treya's going to end up being farmed, as you go through your Sith raids. You will want to put the other Zeta onto her. She needs to have double Zeta so that she can be the lead, and then her unique is very beneficial to make sure that you're not stunned and tied down by debuffs. You really need to have that one. So definitely consider that towards the top of the list, even above the EP one, because you're going to run with the Sith you have now. you're going to run most of them in your Sith Empire, and then the rest underneath Traya lead more than likely. And then it's going to take you time to gear up the lesser ones like Marauder and Assassin, Invader, so that you can run those under EP lead, even though EP can also have Empire under him. So consider that. I know I told you about EP when we went over the Empire section. He will need that lead Zeta. But for right now, definitely want Traya's first because she's going to be a better top tier team. EP will take out kind of the secondary squads, but Traya is going to be a killer for other Treyas. She could take out CLS teams. She could take out Jedi Knight Revan teams. So she's going to do you a lot more favors than having EP ready will. So keep working on them. Keep starring up Darth Nihilus. I know it's going to take a while, but as long as you have them at a high gear level, you should still be able to use them. Again, especially at your level, having all these top tier characters are going to put you at a really good advantage compared to other players who might be totally free to play or not know what they're doing and not have the top meta characters unlocked. So keep working on those. Definitely put more gear into your Sith Trooper because you're going to use him right now with Sith Empire, and you're going to use him just as an extra tank, sometimes with Traya if you need to. All depends on what comes down the pipeline, but he's definitely a great tank to have. So keep doing what you're doing here. You're doing great. The fact that you can take over the arena, and get the top spots, you're doing really good there. Okay, stopping at your Sith Empire, since I mentioned them in the last section, the only one that's not a Sith is your HK. He could use the Zeta on the Loyalty. I believe that's the one that shuts down turn meter gain from opponents that have the protection up, which is meant to shut down Jedi Knight Revan teams. But there is a Jedi Knight Revan counter out right now that uses Thrawn that can still defeat Darth Revan teams even with that Zeta. So it depends on what's around you and what your opponents are using and whether or not they're the ones being a stumbling block to you. You know what I mean? If you need to put the Zeta on so that you can maintain first place in your squad arena, then by all means do it. Always focus on your arena. But if you can still take number one and you find that it's not an issue and you don't need the Zeta, then hold on to it to put somewhere else, because you're going to have a long list of Zetas by the time all's said and done. There's a lot of characters you're going to need to put those on, and they don't add up near fast enough. Okay, let's take a look at your last ground faction, your smugglers. And I know we've touched on some of these before. You don't need to put any work into the vets. Kira can even stay at low gear as long as her lead ability gets up. Take that up all the way, because you're going to use her on offense with Nest, and Nest will be able to put in all the work. Eventually, you'll want to get the Zeta for Nest and take Nest to gear 12, just so that she's a little more sturdy. She's good as far as protection goes with all the protection up, but you do want that health to be up there so that some characters that hit underneath health and things like Plague don't shut her down. She can definitely do a lot of work on her own just with a weak Kira with a maxed lead in, and then Kira will die off. I'm sure you've seen the videos of Nest just countering other teams to death, and she can even do that to a Jedi Knight Revan team in 3v3, sometimes 5v5, really just depends. So definitely keep putting work into her. I mentioned Chewbacca, gearing him up and getting his Zetas on there. And then Han, you really want him, if you're going to do the Rebel teams like with CLS, to get his shoots first Zeta on there so that he starts doing the double taps. Is very important. It's like a key Zeta for the game. So keep those high up on your list to do. Hopefully that helps you. You're doing a good job of, gearing up priority squads and keeping the other stuff at level 1, gear 1. Don't fluff out your roster by taking them up to level 50 and sticking mods on them and taking them to gear 7 or gear 8, because that's not going to help you in combat or in any of the raids or anything, other than just be some extra fluff GP that you could deploy during territory battles. But nobody really cares about that. You'll get the extra stars when you get them. So keep the focus on PvP like you've been doing and stay lean. That's going to help you a lot more, I think, in the long run, having such a PvP focused roster. Now, let's go ahead real quick and move over to your ships and see what you're doing over there. It looks like you're doing pretty well here. You've got the Millennium Falcon unlocked, which is great because that's what you need. Even at 5-star, it can get the job done. So I see you're putting in work on your bounty hunters. If you can get them up 1 more star, that way you can get another star on your Falcon when it comes back around. You'll be in even better shape. It'll make your fleet arena that much easier. There's not a lot to say as far as ships go, because you have to gear up the pilots to go with them. But as long as you can keep hitting the top ranks and getting some extra crystals from the arena, that's going to help fuel your growth. And that's it. That's all you really need from ships. You've got 1 top meta fleet right now, and that's all that matters. So keep working on those. The gear that I mentioned for like Han and Chewie, and modding those with 6E eventually, all that will end up helping out your ships that you're using right now. Keep working on the bounty hunter stars, because even 1 more star onto that Millennium Falcon is going to make your arena life so much easier. So we've gone through all the factions, and hopefully I've given you enough advice to kind of point you in the right direction and see where you need to go and strengthen, the shortcomings that you might have in each squad. And you can pick and choose what's important to you and what squads you feel you want to work on. But hopefully that will help keep you from putting unnecessary resources into places that you won't get much return for your investment. I know you did ask about the raids a little bit. You want to know about those, and I touched on those with your JTR team in P1. For P2, you want to use your Jedi Knight Revan team, and you can use that on auto. There should be several videos online. I would recommend 2. This is just my own personal opinion, is to consume as much content as possible. If you have the time about this game, things you want to learn, go to YouTube and search SWGOH and whatever topic you want to learn about. And you can get all the raid teams and what characters you want to use, and you'll have to adjust your team as your roster permits. But you can run a Jedi Knight Revan team in Phase 2 of the Heroic Sith after doing your JTR in P1, and you can run your Darth Revan team in P3, and then just start dropping whatever you have in P4 when it hits the appropriate, section after Nihilus is dead, and you can start roster dropping. You should be able to put up a pretty decent score with the top teams that you already have. And if you want videos detailing those, I personally don't make them, but one of the YouTubers out there, Skeltrix, does really good raid videos. Just search SWGOH HSith P2 and see how that team works if you're not doing it already. And that should get you top scores with the teams you have at your GP. You're starting off really strong at such a small GP. You should have a good advantage to all the opponents around you at your level. So I hope this has been a help to you. As always, just message me with any questions, and we'll go from there. All right? Have a good one.